Hi, I'm jjbarnes and welcome back to another episode of The Table Read. So welcome back to The Table Read, where I am doing writing advice, writing conversations, talking about characterization techniques, story structure, the general life of a writer. My goal over here on this YouTube channel and with The Table Read in general is to give you the confidence to get your story out into the world. Don't forget you can go to thetableread.co.uk where you will find articles and interviews written by other creative people with wonderful voices who are in the world of film, books, poetry, all sorts of things over there, and they're all so inspiring and I'd love you to see what they have to say. So today's video I am talking about how to write a human who is scarier than a monster. So if you are doing a scary story, a horror or a thriller or like a murder mystery story, you're going to want a villain character. That is the character that is doing terrible bad things, killing people or torturing people or tormenting people or whatever it is. Your characters, your good guy characters, are likely to need to be scared of someone or something, right? Now, if you're writing fantasy, you're quite often, this will be a monster. It could be an alien or a ghost or just some kind of demon character. And those can be terrifying, right? They absolutely can. There is no hesitation, like monsters can be really, really scary. But sometimes you're going to want to do a human villain. And in my personal opinion, I would say that generally speaking, you can make a human villain that is scarier than any monster. Now, monsters might have supernatural powers. They could walk through walls, or they could fly, or come and get you in your nightmares. And this is all possible, right? Which is truly frightening. But the thing is, if you are doing a human villain, there are certain ways that you can make that scarier. So, number one, right? Humans are afforded a certain level of trust that you can then exploit. So, for instance, if you are walking down the road, walking your dog, walking your kids to school, people are driving past in cars all the time. You, as the walker, are putting a great deal of trust and faith in every single person who drives past, that they won't get the sudden urge to steer off the road and drive into you and kill you. You're just putting that faith in them. You have to or you never leave the house. When you are walking down the street, you are putting faith in the people who are walking past you not to suddenly swing an axe at your head. When you open the door because you've got delivery, you are putting your faith in the person behind the door that they are not actually a crazy killer, and as soon as you open the door to accept your parcel, you're going to get stabbed. This is faith, trust that you put in every single human out there. And that means it's easy to exploit. Because as soon as you trust somebody, you are vulnerable. That sounds really brutal, doesn't it? But it's true. So a really good way to play with this is to make your characters trust somebody. Put faith in them. Allow themselves to be vulnerable for whatever reason. It could be anybody. It could be a workmate. It could be a friend, a family member, just anybody. Because as you know, as a person, as soon as you see somebody putting trust in somebody else, that even if you're not consciously thinking of it, you know that they are vulnerable to anything that person could be willing to do. If you think about Agatha in WandaVision, Wanda puts her faith in Agatha so much when she's Agnes that she lets her take her children. She gives her children to that woman to keep safe when she thinks the danger is elsewhere. And that means her children are gone. That's terrifying. Now, obviously, Agatha Harkness isn't a terrifying, terrifying villain from a horror film. But the concept, as a mother, truly terrifying that the person you trust enough to keep your children safe is the reason that they go missing. That's terrifying. So you can play with that. And if you're writing a horror film, then obviously the thing you're doing is going to be written in a way that's very terrifying. But the concept is still true. The moment you put faith in somebody, that faith, that trust can be exploited. Another reason is, number two, human beings are capable of understanding human beings enough to emotionally manipulate them. They can make themselves seem innocent. They can portray emotional purity and kindness and gentleness in a way that a terrifying monster cannot. Because as soon as you've got a terrifying monster, you know, imagine the aliens, right? In Alien. There's no way that monster is going to be able to convince you that it's gentle and kind and to be trusted. No way at all, because it looks like a terrifying monster. But your next door neighbour, 100%. They treat you with kindness and respect. They share a cup of sugar or chat over the garden fence. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know if that was a terrifying monster, because they're able to portray a good human. And that, again, is very frightening, because where are they? You can't tell who the monsters are. When the monsters look like people, you can't tell who's dangerous and who's bad. You can't tell who's a threat, which means you can't ever really feel safe, because how can you know? And I am talking about a story. I'm not trying to turn you into like a complete recluse, because I understand that what I'm saying is like suggesting that you really shouldn't trust anybody. But the point is, in your story, if you know that the monster is actually another person, your characters can never, ever, ever feel safe or settled, because they can't tell where the danger is going to come from. And that is frightening. Another way to write a human villain that is scarier than a monster is to send them on a dark arc. Now, a character arc is always good in a story, because it means that through the course of your story, because of the events that are going on, your character is changed. If nobody ever changes in your story, it suggests that the events going on in your story aren't really that significant, because we are all changed by things that are important, things that matter, things that impact us. So if nobody's impacted, that sort of suggests nothing much is going on. But the dark arc of a villain character can be completely independent of your story, in the sense that no matter what your protagonists do, no matter how much they try to escape, how much they try to diffuse a situation, that character is going to just keep getting worse. So at the beginning of your story, think of Max Cady in Cape Fear. At the beginning of the story, yeah, creepy guy, right? He's stalking them, he's showing up outside restaurants, he's sitting on their wall watching, then the dog goes missing, and you're like, oh, that's bad. And then he shows up at the little girl's school, a little girl, like teenage girl's school, right? But he hasn't done anything outright hideously terrifying to them. You know he's done terrifying things before, and you know that he's a bad guy, but the family, relatively safe. He hasn't broken in, and he could. You know, he's got the ability to get into their house and murder them. He chooses not to, which means you then have a slow build of villainy. And that's very discombobulating and very alarming, because you're not sure when the snap is going to happen, but it's like a pressure cooker. And the more time you spend with this character, the villain character, the monster, the one who you know, and you know in your gut that this person is going to do something truly horrible and truly terrifying, and you can feel it, the pressure is growing, but it's growing slowly. So you're watching it and you're waiting, and the longer you're waiting, and the slightly worse it gets, and the slightly worse it gets, and the slightly worse it gets, the more frightened you are of what is going to be boiling point on this person, because you know it's coming. You can tell it's coming, and it just makes the tension ramp up and ramp up and ramp up. And as I say, a monster, terrifying from the beginning. It's a monster. It's stalking you around your spaceship. It's like coming at you in your nightmares. There's not that much room for escalation when you start a story as a terrifying monster. Yeah, you might get better at trying to catch people, or, you know, the situation might get tenser in different ways, but the monster itself is pretty consistent. There's not much room for an arc there. So the tension has to come from elsewhere. But if your monster is the one who is ramping the tension up, because no matter what your protagonist does, no matter where they go, no matter what they do, that character is growing and boiling and getting stronger and getting worse and getting more dangerous and getting darker, you know there is no escape. You know that that tension is building and growing, and it's horrifying because you're doomed, basically. Because as soon as that villainous character reaches that level of intensity, no matter where they are, they're doomed. I mean, obviously, I know in Cape Fear they escape, but the point is, he still gets them. And that is very frightening. So monster characters can be very scary, but they can't masquerade as innocent and not scary, because they're monsters. They can't try and like pass as not a threat, because they're monsters. And they can't arc from somebody who appears to be not a threat and ramp up the pressure into somebody who is a monster, because they start as monsters. Knowing that the monsters walk amongst us is much more frightening than knowing that there is a monster out there that we can run away from. Because the monsters who are amongst us, you cannot run, because you don't know who you're running from, and you don't know who you can run to, because they're right there all the time, everywhere. That is a very good key to writing a very frightening human villain who's scarier than a monster. So thank you very much for watching my video. I hope this hasn't been too traumatic, because I am saying some very horrible things about the people you might live next door to, and I'm very sorry. But it makes for a really good story. So thank you very much. If you subscribe to this channel, I'm putting out videos every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. You can go to my website, tableread.co.uk. As I say, there are writers over there who are just truly phenomenal, and just you've got to see the things that they are doing. They are so creative and so brilliant, and it's such a privilege to work with them. So yeah, I do say check it out. And what else? Oh, if you comment on this video, talk to me about your favourite human villain. I've talked about Max Cady because he's a brilliant human villain as far as I'm concerned, but talk to me about yours. Hannibal Lecter, again, a really great human villain. Able to sort of act trustworthy almost. Clarice literally trusts him. She says he's not a threat to her. And we know how dangerous he is as well. I love a human villain. I really enjoy them. So yeah, I'd love to hear about your favourites. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back again soon. Bye.